Welcome to Food for Thought podcast, the place to explore, celebrate, and manifest a life motivated and defined by unconditional compassion and optimal wellness. Today's episode is how to eat mindfully. Before we begin, my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at joyfulvegan.com and on social media. You can find my books wherever books are sold. You can join me in my online cooking classes, and you can join me on one of our vegan trips. This podcast is possible because of support of listeners like you. So thank you for subscribing, for supporting, and for listening. You can join other supporters by going to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau and help celebrate the 15th year of the Food for Thought podcast. How cool is that? Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. So many of us who make the decision to go vegan live with the knowledge and the comfort knowing that choosing the foods we do causes little harm as possible, at least intentionally. And that, for me, is the epitome of mindful eating, knowing that the choices I'm making are causing the least amount of harm possible. It's not no harm because there's going to be impact no matter what I do because I'm alive, but it's reduced harm, and that is the best thing we can do. And so that is a great comfort, and to me that's foundational, but there's still so much more we can do in order to bring consciousness and compassion and mindfulness to our food and to our eating. We live in a culture that places more value on doing rather than on being. And so it's no surprise that most people consider eating a secondary activity, squeezing it in as they're driving, as they're working, as they're watching TV. I'm guilty of this too. It's not that I don't ever do this, but eating with awareness allows us to truly enjoy the food we're eating. It allows us to engage in conversations with our table mates or Zoom mates if you're eating with someone online. And it enables us to just slow down. Eating is a sensual experience, and it should be experienced as such. Literally, we're using all of our senses when we're eating. Our sense of smell, our sense of sight, our sense of hearing. We can hear the food crack and we can hear it sizzle. And of course, our sense of taste and our sense of smell. When we eat mindfully, we notice the texture and aroma of the food. We savor the flavor of each bite. Eating mindfully draws our attention to our appreciation of the food, from our chewing to our swallowing. One of my favorite lines from the Tao Te Ching is in chapter 23, and it goes, "Be like the forces of nature. When it blows, there is only wind. When it rains, there is only rain." And I think about that often when I'm making an effort to be mindful, and that includes when I'm eating. I used to pride myself on multitasking, on being able to multitask, and I think some of us can do it very well. But I don't want to do it anymore. I want to be focused on what I'm doing. When it blows, there is only wind. When it rains, there is only rain. When I'm eating, I only want to eat. I only want to focus on that process and that experience. I don't want to rush. I don't want to treat it like a secondary need. It's primary and it's fundamental. So when I eat, I only eat. And of course, that's not entirely true because sometimes I'm talking, sometimes I'm reading, and as I said, sometimes I am driving, sometimes I am. I have to say, I don't really eat when I drive. I will say that. I don't drive very often, but that is probably a rule. I could say I don't really engage in eating while I'm driving. But I have, and of course my husband and I have absolutely sat down in front of the TV and eat meals. That's not uncommon, but I'd like to say that it is the exception rather than the rule. So some simple tips that can help us eat with awareness and pleasure are as follows. So number one, plate your food in an appealing way, whether it's for yourself or for your friends and family. I think we're more prone to do this when it's for guests, but why not do it for yourself as well, and enjoy what you see and look at all the colors. And as you know from the episode on eating by color and from my book, Color Me Vegan, I really encourage eating by color. It is not only the most nutrient dense way to eat, it's also the most beautiful and sensually appealing way to eat. So plate your food in a way that is appealing and beautiful. Eat with chopsticks is not something I have done very often, except when I am eating Asian food. We do tend to use chopsticks when we're eating sushi or when we're eating Thai food even. But it is a way to have less food on your fork or on your utensil, and therefore slow down the eating process. One way to slow down the eating process, it's often recommended to eat with your non-dominant hand, which is very interesting. I am technically ambidextrous because I can do many things with both my left and my right hand. I am left hand dominant. I write and I eat. And what's the other main thing? I write and I eat with my left hand, but I can do other things with my right hand. But I can also eat with my right, not as skillfully as I do with my left, but I try that sometimes when I'm eating, and it does slow you down. It's good. It slows you down. One recommendation I see often is to chew your food 30 times per bite. You probably won't be able to for each one, but reach for the moon and you'll hit the stars. So even if you don't wind up chewing each bite 30 times, in aspiring to, you will slow down. Turn off the TV, turn off the cell phone, turn off the computer while you eat. As I said, David and I will do this. There are times when we have had a long day and we're tired, and we do talk a lot, the two of us, because we spend a lot of time together. I've realized that it's not the case for everybody. If you have a family, if you have kids, if you just have hectic schedules and you're managing more than just you and another person. But we will sometimes say, let's just watch something funny while we're eating. And it's fun and we are laughing and we will do that. But it is more of the exception than the rule. I do really like sitting down at the table, turning everything off, even lighting some candles, whether it's, a special occasion or not, and enjoying our meal. I do have to say, I usually have my phone at the table because I often take a photo of my food, as so many people do now, right? The phone eats first, as they say, but I do put it away. We don't check the email and we don't check our phones while we're eating and while we're just talking. Eat sitting down. It seems like such an obvious thing to say, but a lot of people eat standing up, especially lunch, right when they're kind of in between things. Eat sitting down. Don't eat while driving is definitely a way to be mindful. When we're talking about taking those bites and chewing, identify the flavors in each bite. I actually have a cooking class coming up, and it will remain as an on-demand class if you hear this afterwards, but it's spices and herbs. And it is funny because one of the games I play with David, though he doesn't like it, is I will ask him to identify the flavors in something I've made, because he'll say, this is really good, what's in it? And I'll say, you tell me. And he's like, I don't want to play this game, because he's not often right. So I give him a little grief when I'm like, that's not coriander, it's cumin, obviously. So he doesn't like playing the game. But in the cooking class that we have coming up, I think I've persuaded him to join me in the class, because I'm going to do that with the students in the class. Is I'm going to help you identify the flavors and the colors and the look of certain spices and herbs, so you can become more comfortable cooking with them and feel just really confident being spontaneous with spices and herbs without having to feel you have to follow a recipe for them, etc. And so it's something I encourage you to do. Just identify those flavors. If you've cooked the meal, then you know what's in there. But still, you can say, yeah, there's that cumin, and there's the cinnamon, or there's the hot pepper, or whatever you use. It's a wonderful way to slow down and enjoy each bite. Don't follow each bite with a swig of a beverage. Try eating without an accompanying beverage. Wait until the end of the meal to drink. Obviously there might be exceptions if the meal is particularly spicy, but what we tend to do, and again, rushing eating, is we'll take a bite of food and then we swig down some water or whatever we're drinking. We don't taste the food. We're not chewing the food properly. We won't be able to digest that food very well. So either don't do that or just don't have anything at the table if you want to do that. Rest your fork or your spoon or your chopsticks on your plate between each bite. That will certainly encourage you to chew 30 times. Eat at a table, not on a living room chair with a plate on your lap. So eat at the table. Take a moment to express gratitude for the meal. Obviously, traditionally, this has been called saying grace. So say grace, have a moment of silence, but express gratitude before eating. This is something we do in our home. We give a moment of thanks. It's a form of mindfulness. You can do it silently. You can say it out loud, but speak from your heart. Something we say at our table when we're about to eat is we're grateful for the food in front of us, the love between us, the roof above us, and the animals among us. And we're grateful that no one was harmed in the making of this food. So feel free to use that or create your own, but taking a moment to express gratitude for the food you are about to eat is a really lovely way to eat mindfully. Something I often recommend, and I think it applies here as well, is don't wait until dinner time to decide what to have for dinner. I argue that our blocks to eating healthfully and compassionately are mostly mental, and I'm convinced that the secret to eating well and consuming more vegetables is planning in advance. Just giving our meals a little forethought can make all the difference, and that doesn't require more than just thinking and deciding. Most people decide what they're going to eat once they're already hungry. And at that stage, we don't make decisions based on mindful nutrition. We make decisions based on speed or convenience or cravings. So I personally think we should know the night before what we're having for dinner the following night. You can stretch it to the next morning. So in the morning, you should know what you're having for dinner that night so that you can create some, prep, you can prep some vegetables, and so that you're mindful, so that you're thoughtful, and so that you're excited about whatever it is that you're going to have versus, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock rolls along and you open the refrigerator. You're not going to make the most mindful choice. So that is something that I think will make a difference both in terms of our physiological wellness, but also our psychological mindfulness and well-being. Another way to incorporate mindful eating into your life is to stop eating when you're full. The body actually sends the signal about 20 minutes after the brain that we're full, which is why we often unconsciously overeat. It takes a little while for our bodies and our brains to be aligned when it comes to feeling satiated. So if we slow down, you can give your body a chance to catch up to your brain and hear the signals to eat the right amount. So that's what slowing down will do. But then what happens is you stop eating when you're full as opposed to continuing to shove food in when you don't need any more. It's also related to, I think, this misguided notion that in order to demonstrate we're done eating is to feel so completely full that we're gorged, right? I mean, I grew up with uncles and, father who would unbuckle, their pants at the dinner table and like kind of pull away like, ugh. And of course, sometimes that's mostly at feasts when we have some kind of holiday we're celebrating, but it was also during regular dinners. Feeling so sick that you have to loosen your pants should not be the barometer for being done eating, right? There's a Japanese term, hara hachibu, which means eat until you're 80% full. roughly in English, the Japanese phrase translates to eat until you are 8 parts, right? 8 out of 10 parts full, or that your belly is 80% full. So Hari Hachibu. It originated in the city of Okinawa. And of course, we know that the residents of Okinawa have really some of the most healthy eating habits, and they have the lowest rates of illness from heart disease, cancer, stroke, and they have a very long life expectancy. So it's not a bad idea to take a cue from them. But I love that idea that you pull away from the table, you stop eating when you're 80% full. And when you slow down, you're able to determine that. Now, COVID definitely changed so much for all of us, namely not being able to go to restaurants and not being able to have meals with our friends and even family members if they don't live with us. I personally am someone who loves to entertain. I love to cook for friends and I love to cook for my husband. So luckily I get to do that. I love to host. I do love to host. Now, I do like going out to restaurants, and goodness knows I cannot wait to do that more than ever. But I really do prefer cooking at home for friends. So during COVID, when we weren't able to do this, we hosted many distanced dinners and distanced drinks. I have a lot of photos on my website at joyfulvegan.com. Why? Because sharing a meal with friends is a form of mindful eating. And when we couldn't do this safely and distanced, we would have Zoom dinners. Even though, of course, it was not the same as being in person, it enabled us to connect with our loved ones. And we still continue to do this. And I think we'll probably always do this now because we've had dinners with friends who live across the country that we've never done that with. And COVID was one of the things that obviously inspired us to do that. And when we have these dinners, and you can see some of the photos also of our Zoom dinners at joyfulvegan.com. When we would do this, sometimes we would plan on making the same meal, the friends we were having the meal with on Zoom, and it made it feel like we were at the same table, even though we know we're not. It was just a little brain trick. Sometimes we would have drinks together, again, on Zoom in one room of our house. Like we would have drinks in the living room, just as we would do if they were here in person, and then we would go to the table and have dinner at the table. The point is, sharing a meal with loved ones and friends is so fundamental to who we are as humans. And even during a pandemic, we found that we can and that we need to do this to create this mindfulness and to do this thoughtfully. So give it a try. Doing any of these things will contribute to mindful eating, because remember, don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something, anything. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.